So no balance.
Then I'll call this meeting to order, please. Adoption of the agenda, recommendation that the agenda for the March 27th, 2018 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented. I understand there's some amendments.
There are, thank you, Your Worship. We have two amendments. The first to include a late item correspondence in section 7, the reading file, and second amendment is to delete item 15.1. There will be no in-camera this evening.
May I please have a motion to adopt the March 27, 2018 regular meeting of council as amended? Blanchette and Salt discussion.
Do we have a paper copy of the addition?
I did bring them in. Did council not receive a copy of it?
There was several attachments, but not a paper copy.
Oh, okay. I'll have to.
Councilor Blanchette, would you like?
Yeah, I don't have anything to reference to.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have a copy of it?
I do not.
I do not either. I did provide some notes, so I will probably. If you want to carry on and adopt this amendment, I'll get copies for you.
Thank you. All in favor as amended? Opposed, carried. Adoption of the previous regular meeting, the minutes of the previous regular meeting of council, March 13. Salt, Blanchette. Any omissions or amendments? Councillor Salt.
On, sorry, bear with me, on number 18, adjournment, the date is incorrect. It says March 16, 2018, and it was March 13.
The date on the adjournment was incorrect?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have a delegation tonight, item 4.1 from KPMG for the Village of Valemount 2017 draft financial statements. The floor is yours.
Hopefully that will work. Hopefully everyone can hear me. So hi, my name is Chris Calder. I'm a senior manager in the audit practice in our Prince George office. And just here to discuss the results of the 2017 audit. I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I'll walk through on the screen, so hopefully everyone can see, and I think you maybe have a copy in your packages. So we'll walk through, and please feel free to ask me any questions as we go or at the end. Just a bit of an agenda for our presentation. So we'll just discuss the auditor's report, the financial statements as a whole, a little bit of a discussion on surplus and reserves, and again, time for any questions. So before I dig into the presentation, I'd just like to thank Lori and the rest of the village staff for all their help during the audit. We can't get it all done without all of their hard work each year, so we want to thank them for that. I just wanted to point out that there has been no significant changes to auditing standards in 2017, no significant or updated accounting policies for the village, so kind of status quo from a overall point of view. So I'll take you through through our auditor's report. So we intend to issue a clean audit report again this year in accordance with public sector accounting standards. So we don't have a management letter to be issued, so we don't find any issues of note to bring to council's attention. And yeah, we plan to issue that clean audit report once a few items are completed. So we're just waiting on one legal letter back from one of the lawyers and awaiting council approval tonight for the numbers. So the numbers in the following slides are draft because they are awaiting council approval. So we provide them in draft form until finalized. So I'll take you through the numbers, starting with statement of financial position and financial assets. So cash this year, cash and cash equivalents, which is cash and GIC investments. So 3.636 million this year versus 3.45, an increase of 185,000 over the previous year. So a slight increase there, and that's a function of basically all of the other items on the statements, and we'll get to sort of those later and explain how that arises. Accounts receivable, $823,000 this year versus $549,000 last year. So at the end of December 31st, 2017, there's $338,000 in accounts receivable relating to the sewer lift station. So that's increased receivable at year end. So that was received after in 2018 for that project that was ongoing in 2017. And third item, investment in Valemount Community Forests Company Limited, $5.354 million this year versus $4.206 million. So this is the cumulative earnings that the community forest has earned over its life as a company. So in the current year, the community forest had income of just over $1.1 million, and so that directly shows up on the village's financial statements, as the village is the 100% shareholder of the community forest. So that brings us to total financial assets of $9.8 million versus $8.2 in the previous year. So turning over to financial liabilities, accounts payable and accrued liabilities, $279,000 this year versus $365,000 last year. So this is a decrease in sort of your regular day-to-day payables at year end. Last year there were a few projects outstanding that were being paid for, some work at the library and some small capital purchases, and so we don't have those payables this year. So down to kind of a more regular level for accounts payable at year end based on the timing. Next item down, development cost charge reserve fund, $171,000 this year versus $119,000. So the big increase there was for subdivision fees relating to Whisper Creek log homes. So it was $45,000 in the year. So collecting some money in order to fund future sewer and water expenses for those new builds or new subdivisions as they're put in. Next line down, deferred revenue, $739,000 this year versus $531,000, so an increase of just over $200,000. This is an increase in unexpended grants at December 31st, 2017 versus 16. So there's $165,000 of an increase in unexpended grants, so those will be spent in 2018, specifically around the rural dividend amount for the community forest of $100,000 that's being held at year end and will be spent in 2018, and also an increase in hotel tax that gets used for various advertising and those sorts of expenses. So again, this is just a carryover for next year, but shows up as deferred revenue as the money was received in 2017. Refundable deposits, $19,000, no change there. Long-term debt net of sinking funds, $727,000 versus $807,000. So this is your regular repayments on the 4 debt issues that the village has. And in 2017, the garbage truck and the community hall loans were both paid off. So those are no longer on the books. So we just have a couple of water debts that are ongoing and you're paying each year. So that will continue to come down over the next few years. So that brings us to total financial liabilities, $1.937 million versus $1.882 in the previous year. On the next slide, so these are non-financial assets, so assets that are not kind of transferable to cash. Prepaid expenses, $17,519, so very comparable to the prior year, just for insurance and things of that nature. That carry forward into 2018. Tangible capital assets, so the capital for the village, $13.815 million versus $13.644, so an increase of 170. So that is additions of $740,000, mainly the lift station for $595,000, generator for $80,000, some paving work for around $50,000, and then some work at the dog pound and at the interpretive center, so I believe upstairs, just with the pending move and things of that nature. Then we take off amortization of about $570,000, and that brings us to the $170,000 increase in capital this year. So that's the balance sheet side, or the statement of financial position side. We'll move over to the operations side. So this slide just highlights the total revenues, expenses, and surplus, and we'll get into the detail of each of these on the next few slides. So total revenue this year, $4.757 million compared to $3.338 last year and $3.881 budgeted for the year. So the main difference, and we'll see this a little later on, is the Valemount Community Forest pickup. So we do pick up the income from the community forest, and that's not budgeted for, as the village isn't expecting a certain amount for the, of income from the community forest. So that's really the big difference on the revenue side. On the expense side, you'll see that the 2017 expenses are 3.084 million, and that's a little bit higher than last year, but lower than budgeted. So in total, we have a surplus of 1.672 million for the village, compared to 319,000 last year and 743,000 budgeted. Just one other note on the budget: you do prepare a balanced budget at the start of the year and pass through council. What we do to get to this annual surplus in the budget is to take out any items that are not true revenue or expense, so anything that's capital or transfers or things of that nature. So just a bit of an accounting exercise to get to that surplus. So the budget is balanced and is prepared as such. It's just that's sort of our accounting exercise to get to that surplus. So just want to explain that, as that sometimes doesn't look like it makes sense. But so on to revenue. So just explaining that total revenue amount a little bit further. So net taxation revenue, 804,000 this year versus 764. So as you can see, basically right on budget for the taxation revenue based on the rates that were set by council. For sales and user fees, 813,000 this year versus 760 last year. So a bit of an increase relating to increased water and sewer user fees in the year. Licenses and permits, 45,000, very comparable to the prior year, 43. Hotel and resort tax, so we talked about that a little bit earlier, 199,000 in the year. So that's recording sort of what was spent in the year and deferring the rest. So budgeted at 150, the 199 is very much more comparable to 2015 levels when it was just over 200,000 in revenue. For rentals, $32,000, very comparable to both budget and to prior year. And then we get down to government transfers or grants. So these are provincial grants, just over 1 million. So a bit of an increase in the grant that BC Hydro provides each year of about 65,000. That makes up the majority of the increase there between the prior and current year. So over to the next page, government transfers or government grants federal. So 400,790 in the current year. So a large increase there, and the reason for that is the sewer lift station grant that the federal government provided. So again, big increase there, and also an increased Canada Day grant for the Canada 150 celebration. So usually, I think last year 850, that was for Canada Day, and this year you got around just under 10,000 to put that celebration on. So there's the difference there. Government transfers other, this reflects Columbia Basin Trust or CBT grants. So 229,000 in the current year versus 190,000 in the previous year. And again, this is just recognizing what was actually spent on CBT grants. So there are some amounts deferred in that deferred revenue amount that we discussed earlier. Investments and penalties, 71,000 this year versus 58. So comparable and a bit of an increase just with increases in market rates and investment returns in 2017 compared to 16. And then final item on this slide, equity and income of Valemount Community Forest, 1.147 million. So again, this is the income for the year from the community forest, and we pick up 100% of that in the statements as the village is the 100% shareholder. So that brings us to the total revenues for 4,757,000 in the current year. So that's the revenue side. I'll flip over to expense side and just highlight a few items. So legislature, 46,000 versus 47,000, very comparable and very close to budget. General government, just over $1 million this year, so a little bit down from the previous year and just a little bit over budget. Protective services, 71,000 this year versus 65, so that's quite comparable to both budget and the prior year. Transportation services, 437,000 this year versus 352 in the previous year. So this was budgeted a little bit higher this year at 422,000. And the reason for that is a few kind of unique one-time items for tree removal and repairs out at the airport. A little bit more work being done in those areas that we didn't have in the previous year. So that's causing the increase from a prior year to current year. For environmental and public health, 88,000 versus 99,000 in the previous year, so that's quite comparable as well. And for recreation and community development, 669,000 versus 612,000 in the previous year. So a little bit of an increase spending on certain grants, some of the miscellaneous and CBT grants that flows through this caption, as well as some additional spending on some of the hotel tax items in the year, such as billboards and advertising. So that's part of the expenses. And on the next slide, just the last two for water and for sewer. So for water, 385,000 versus 394 in the previous year, so very close to budget, or very close to the previous year. And sanitary sewer system, 380,000 this year versus 419 last year, so a little bit of a decrease there. So that brings us to total expenses, 3,084,615. So as you can see, about 50,000 below budget and about 65,000 over the prior year. So this slide just outlines that surplus amount that we discussed earlier, the 1.672, and just shows the increase in accumulated surplus. So total accumulated surplus for the village at the end of 2017 is $21,710,051, and I'm going to break down the portions of that on the next slide. So on slide 13, this breaks down the surplus into 5 areas. So 4 on this page and 1 on the next page. So investment in tangible capital assets, that is the village's capital items, this building, public works equipment, all of that. So increase this year, up to $13,097,000. So again, just reflecting the capital investment that is in the village. So 13 million of the 21 million surplus is into the capital assets. Next line down, general fund unrestricted. So an increase this year to 2,009,213. So this is the portion of the general fund that doesn't have any restriction to it and is not water or sewer. So anything that would be general in that sense. The next line down, general fund restricted. So this represents the VCF, or Valemount Community Forest surplus. So we split that out just to show the portion that relates specifically to Valemount Community Forest, just so that can kind of be separated and sort of accounted for separately. So still a part of your surplus, but just wanted to restrict that from a user point of view so that you can see what the difference is. So 5.354, and again, that matches back to the numbers previously that we discussed. At the bottom of this page, water utility fund, 400,417, up just under 100,000 over the prior year. And then one more left on the next slide. Sanitary sewer fund. So a bit of a decrease in the sewer fund this year, and that's really the result of the large sewer addition. So there was an increase in water and sewer rates, and that is helping the surplus in those funds. But the one large addition for the lift station this year kind of brought down that sewer fund amount. But without that addition, it would have increased quite significantly. So that gives us total surplus before we discuss reserves of 20,993,409, which is up 1.66 million from the previous year. And on the next slide, I'll talk about reserves. So small changes to the reserves, really just interest earned on these balances. So these are the total reserves that the village has at December 31st, 2017. So for capital works and machinery, 375,000. For land sales, 65,000. For MFA unexpended, should be unexpended, not unexpected. They are expected, so I knew I'd find a mistake in here after I prepared it. And then the final line, MFA unexpended funds, sewer 260,000 for total reserves of 716,000. So again, small increases there for interest that's earned, but that money is there for future projects in those specific areas. Next slide just outlines the notes to the financial statements. So I believe everyone received a copy of the financial statements proper. This just outlines all of the notes that are included. I'll just highlight one item, note 7. We added that this year for deferred revenue. The village has always had deferred revenue balances, but we felt it was getting to be significant, so we wanted to show the breakout between what was unexpended grants, property taxes that have been prepaid and other sort of deferred revenue, just to give an idea of what the balance is sitting in there is. And again, all those amounts get used up in the future years. It's just sort of a tracking and the timing of when money is received. So we just added a note for that purpose, just to sort of provide a little bit more info on that in the statements. Aside from that, as I mentioned, no changes in accounting policies, no changes in auditing standards or anything from our side. So the notes, aside from the addition of note 7, really remain the same from previous years. We have some new standards coming down within the next 4 or 5 years, but nothing that's coming in the next, nothing significant that's coming in the next 1, 2, 3 years. So that's, you know, that's good, because we've gone through, they're always changing something, but for now things are fairly status quo from an accounting point of view. So. And with that, I can take any questions that you have on either the presentation or on the financial statements as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Collier. May I please have a motion first to receive the delegation? Blanchette, Reimer. Discussion. Any questions for Mr. Collier? Comments? Councillor
I
Blanchette.
just want to thank you. I wanted to thank our Director of Finance for another great job. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions?
Just a repeat of what Councillor Blanchette just said too. Thank you again. It's nice to hear things are nice and clean again, and good work to Lori and the rest of the staff for all their hard work, making your job a little easier, I hope.
For sure. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Collier, once again for making the trip and bringing us all up to speed on our current consolidated financials in draft form. Thank you.
I've left a few things with Lori just for signing and things, so that'll help to finalize the process. But other than that, everything's kind of with Lori. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor to receive the delegation? Opposed? Carried. Is there anything in the reading file that anybody wants to bring to surface? Moving on. Reading file?
Yeah, one in the township of Small Machine. What's the asset management resolution? Do we have any further on that, or?
They are looking to put forth a resolution that supports sound asset management practices as a means to achieve local sustainable service delivery, and that BC municipalities and regional districts, their respective CAO staff would benefit from the guidance to a common communication approach to enhance asset management practices, and that the township of Spalding recommends to UBCM to resolve, develop, and implement such a common communications approach in partnership with the LGMA and Asset Management BC.
Yeah, Your Worship, when I read that, I was having trouble interpreting that into some kind of practical English, and wondered what thought process came behind this, and what assets are we having difficulty managing?
That I'm not aware of. Would you encourage staff to make contact with Miss Cindy Graves, the corporate officer over there?
Well, I think that came from Courtney rather than from Spell Machine. I think they're piggybacking that Courtney, so.
Okay.
Rather than take staff time to do the research.
By all means.
Thank you.
Pick up the phone. Anything else? Item 8, administrative reports. Item 8.1, CBT, AAP 2018. You wish to have that recommendation. So that council approves the adjudication committee's recommendation that the Village of Valemount Housing Committee receive $15,000 for the affordable housing sites and feasibility plan. And before I take a motion there, I need to recuse myself.
Floor is yours, Councillor Blanchette.
The recommendation is that council approve the CBT, CIP, AAP Adjudication Committee's recommendation that Valemount and Area Recreation Development Association receives. What?
The first one.
recommendation.
First one.
Where? Oh.
He just recused himself.
Oh, sorry, I flipped too long. That council approves the CBT, CIP, AAP Adjudication Committee's recommendation that the Village of Valemount's Housing Committee receives $15,000 for affordable housing sites feasibility plan. All in favor? Carried. Is that the only one?
He's back
other
in
one?
for this one,
Is he back in?
back in for the second one,
Okay,
and then he's back out again.
okay.
Number 2.
Number 2. Recommendation that council approves the adjudication committee's recommendation that the Valemount and Area Recreation Development Association receive $15,000 for Valemount Bike Park Phase 4. Blanchette. Salt. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 3, I will be taking a walk as well. Councilor Blanchette.
Okay, the recommendation is that council approves CBT's Adjudication Committee's recommendation that the Valemount Children's Activity Society receive $19,650 for the playground rejuvenation. Can I have a motion? Salt and Reimer, all in favor? Carried.
For this one?
They should have lumped them all in the same.
Yes, we were unaware.
Okay.
Number 4. That council approves adjudication committee's recommendation that the Robson Valley Spay and Neuter Society receive $7,000 for the Spay and Neuter Vaccinate project. Blanchette, Reimer, discussion, all in favor? Opposed, carried. The council approves the adjudication committee's recommendation that the Royal Canadian Legion Valemount Branch number 266 receive $13,785 for replacement of kitchen and hall equipment and furnishings. Reimer, Blanchette, all in favor? Carried. That council approves the recommendation that the Yellowhead Outdoor Recreation Association be denied funding in the amount of $20,000 for the 5-mile recreation site development, planning and engineering due to concerns of fire risks, water issues, and public concern. Blanchette, Salt, discussion, all in favor? Carried. The council approves the adjudications committee recommendation that the Valemount Minor Hockey Association receive $7,000 for the VMHA Power Skating Camp. Blanchette, Salt, all in favor? Carried. That council approves the committee's recommendation that the Canoe Valley Community Association receives $6,495 for child care licensing upgrades. Blanchette, Salt, all in favor? Carried. Councilor Blanchette. Recuse myself.
recommendation is that council approves the adjudication committee's recommendation that the Valemount Affordable Rental Society be denied funding in the amount of $59,280 for Valemount Affordable Rental Society startup projects. Can I have a motion? Reimer and Salt, all in favor?
Can I make a point on this?
Yep.
I would hesitate to ever overturn a recommendation from the committee unless there is absolutely good reason, demonstrable reason to overturn something. Otherwise, this body here will be doing the decision-making on this rather than the committee. And the committee is made up of volunteers that volunteer to do this. So, it may seem like rubber stamping, but it's not. So that's my comment in relation to this particular recommendation.
I think now's a good time, too, to say that the committee members are all volunteers, and this is a rough committee. This is hard work. No decision is come upon lightly. There are hours and hours and hours of deliberation and rereading and looking through and discussions, and every single decision that this committee makes is hard. And sometimes things don't go the way we think they're going to go for different reasons. And unfortunately, this is one of those times. But I don't want anybody to think that the committee took anything lightly, because they didn't. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of heartfelt deliberations back and forth, and it was a hard decision.
I also highly respect what the committee does. Like you said, it's a lot of hard work. I've been in that position before. You're making decisions that may not always be popular ones, and it certainly is not easy. There's always, the following year, there's always other options to look into, and I too agree that it's never something that I would want to overturn and overstep as well. Councillor Reimer worded that very well, is it does appear that we're just rubber stamping, but we know that the committee has put in hours and hours of their time, and they are volunteers, and I think we need to respect that and respect their decisions.
Anything else?
None here.
Okay, all in favor of the recommendation? Okay, carried. Is he coming back in for the next?
As far as I'm aware, yes, he is clear.
Number 10.
Number 10, the council approves the adjudication committee's recommendation that the Robson Valley Support Society be denied in funding the amount of $36,164 for the community coordinator of volunteers due to low public and committee support. Blanchette, Reimer, discussion? All in favor? Carried. The council approves the adjudication committee's recommendation that the Valemount Senior Citizens Association of BC be denied funding in the amount of $7,770 for the Circle of Security Parenting Program. Blanchette, Reimer, all in favor? Carried. Yes.
I would like to make a comment too with respect to the CPT community initiatives in affected areas. I think there's been a misunderstanding that just because there may be enough funds to go around for all of the projects applied for, that they should just automatically all get the funding. So again, that's a misconception that's out there, and that's why we have the adjudication committee, that's why we have a staff member that work very closely with Columbia Basin Trust to decide if these funds are worthy of being distributed to these organizations. So I just want to dispel the myth that just because there's enough funds that everyone should just get it.
Thank you. Councillor Blanchette, if you want to comment on that?
I did, thank you.
Thank you. All right, item, is there anything else, Ms. Shepherd? Thank you. Item 8.2, the spring cleanup event. That the recommendation is that the report regarding the spring cleanup event be received and that the spring cleanup event be supported by council. Reimer and Blanchette. Discussion. Councillor Blanchette.
This is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for all of us to get rid of that stuff that's hard to move. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and we need to grab hold of this and run with it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Davey, I just found a discrepancy in the report. Background, second step. Perhaps the costs of approximately $50 per vehicle paid by the owner to the village should be to the company itself.
Very good, Your Worship.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Carried. Item 9, bylaws and policies. Item 9.1, Village of Valemount zoning amendment bylaw number 780, 2018. The recommendation that the Village of Valemount zoning amendment bylaw 780, 2018 be adopted. Blanchette, Reimer, discussion? All in favor? Carried. Council reports. Councillor Salt.
Oh, I knew you were going to pick me. Let's change things up a bit.
Typically share this together.
Yeah. Let me just see here. On the 16th, I had a Trans-County Element Highway Association board teleconference meeting. Our AGM is coming up very quickly on Friday, April 6th. So we were just trying to wrap up some final business leading to our going board meeting and our AGM. So hope to have a fairly good turnout. We've been inviting all of the different ministries from the different provinces to either attend in person or provide updates, and that's something we've always try and don't always succeed with getting them all there. This year it's looking like it could be an exception to having multiple provinces there with their MOTs, so hope they still are able to carry on. So really looking forward to it. And then on the 20th I had a parcel tax roll review panel meeting. And I'm here before you tonight.
Thank you very much. Councillor Reimer.
I've just been doing behind-the-scenes work at Valemount Community Forest by email and by telephone and so on, and driving home from sunny South.
And we thank you for it. And no great fruits to show for it.
I do.
What? Thank you, Councillor Reimer. Councillor Blanchette.
So on the 15th, I met with our CEO for the Clean Up Property Initiative, and I'd like to put a kudos out to our bylaw officer, Chris Dolbeck, because she really ran with this, did a wonderful job. And I just want to reiterate again to everybody, this is a chance to get rid of that old truck we've got in our backyard, or the old grate that somebody was going to put on their fishing boat that's in my backyard. Things like that. So
it's all in your backyard.
It's a really good opportunity for all of us to take a little bit of pride in our community and just get rid of some stuff that we've been wanting to get rid of for years. This company's coming in. It was really hard to get them to come in, and so they're here, so let's fill it up. On the 15th, I also had a housing committee meeting, and we're moving forward with our need for housing. And on the 20th, I also had a parcel tax roll review meeting. And that is it.
Thank you very much. I attended a VARTA board meeting on the 21st, and then one of our directors and the general manager there attended the British Columbia Snowmobiling Federation AGM in Revelstoke over last weekend, where we, VARTA, was presented with an award for outstanding snowmobile tourism promotion and development. So kudos to Varda, their board of directors and staff. That is my report. Motion to receive the verbal reports provided by myself, Councillors Blanchette, Reimer, and Salt. Salt and Blanchette, all in favor? Carried. Project file tracker, item 12.1. The recommendation is that the list of outstanding previous resolutions and the project file tracker be received. Blanchette, Reimer, all in favor? Or any discussion first? All in favor? Carried. No motion required for the calendar events. It's published. Public comment. Item 14.1, public comments specifically on items considered by council as part of the approved agenda this evening. Mr. Wilkinson.
It's coming back to the thing that you recused yourself from, the bars. I appreciate the efforts put in by the adjudication committee. I'd like to stand up here and say I've been turned down by them more than I've ever been accepted by them in all my grants. And I've understood them all. This is the first one I've ever questioned. And I question it on the basis of the 3 reasons they gave for turning it down. If those 3 reasons are all arguably not, they didn't act on proper information. They didn't look at the information. They didn't look that it was a separate society. They didn't give money to this society because some other society hasn't proven their worth. That makes me question that, well, you didn't want to rubber stamp something that you did, because that letter came to you before tonight, and I feel it was sort of rubber stamped, because where I agree you have to go to that committee. I support that committee. I always have. I've had a lot of friends on it. My wife served on it. We know how hard that is. But this one, I don't think was looked at properly. And all I'm asking is that it does get looked at properly. And you can see from my letter what the outlines were. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Ms. Dyson?
I'd just like to say I served on the CBT Adjudication Committee for years and years, and I always appreciated that council respected what we said, but there were times when issues came back that council questioned what we had done, and we appreciated that too, that it wasn't a rubber stamp. And if when I was on the committee I thought a decision was made on incorrect assumptions, basically, I would like that brought back to the committee and questioned. And I do feel like the letter that came forward wasn't given any consideration or discussion. Thank you.
Other comments from members of the public? Ms. Applebaum?
I'm losing my voice and I wrote it out, so hopefully I'll have time to read it. And I wrote it big so I don't have to wear my glasses. My name's Jen Applebaum. I'm at 1323 7th Avenue in Valemount. And this is regards to the CBT decision as well about VARs. I'm the owner of Rustic Luxury Home Services, and I've dedicated the last 12 years of my life to the business of local rental housing. I'm also the current president of the Valemount Learning Society, a director on the Valemount College Society Board, and an active member of the Village Housing Committee. As a Valemount resident since 2001, I have volunteered on numerous boards, committees, and community functions along with many of my fellow residents and neighbors. There comes a time when volunteer hours and expertise is just not enough to keep a project sustainable or to operate community programs. The decision to deny funding to support a newly formed affordable housing society is wrong. It's just wrong. I believe it must be based on misinterpreted or misunderstood information, as this decision makes absolutely no sense for Valemount. This project achieved a community ranking of 7th out of the 12 proposals, and yet over $160,000 of available funding has been left unspent. And I know we don't have to spend it all, but again, this doesn't make sense to me. VARS will create employment. It will create economic and community development. It will address an immediate and future community need. This funding is meant for precisely this type of project. The financial support requested was split between 3 tasks. Even if the committee felt that some of those tasks could not be supported through this program, how could the importance of supporting the Housing Society itself be denied? Who will be approached to advocate for affordable housing development in the future? It will be VARS. Until rental income is available to provide an operating budget for the new society, it's being guided by 4 volunteer directors, not affordable housing experts, just local volunteers. Valemount is in a housing crisis. This is well known. It is well known by homeowners, tenants, investors, and landlords in every level of government. It is well known that to ease this crisis, along with updating rules and policies, bylaws, and urban planning, new housing stock needs to actually be created. To create this stock for affordable housing, one of the first steps is to identify who will champion the actual work involved. Unless projects are undertaken by private developers or a municipal housing authority, which I don't think the village is going to create, this work is performed by a nonprofit. For a nonprofit society to qualify for most financial support, that society must meet several very specific requirements, and no other organization in the area is able to or willing to take on housing projects or meet these requirements. The Valemount Affordable Rental Society, VARS, was created specifically to meet those requirements and be available to assist with creating and operating housing projects for the community. It was created out of an immediate need to provide housing options for students expected to arrive in our community to attend the new Valemount College as early as this summer. Its first project will be to repurpose existing motel rooms into student housing, and then seek to develop a small stock of additional rental housing on vacant land that it now owns. This has been made possible by a significant financial and labor donation by the Valemount Learning Society in partnership with 2 prominent funding and housing experts, BC Housing and the Columbia Basin Trust. That partnership is for that specific project, not for the operations of a society. VARS has been created to fulfill a significant and immediate need in our community, and it did so from the passion, foresight, and integrity of a group of dedicated volunteers and staff. It's quite unfortunate that following 10 months of intensive work to get to its current position, VARS will continue to rely solely on those same volunteers and provincial partners to seek out alternate means to begin business operations for Valemount without your local support.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, please? Hearing none, motion to receive public comment. Blanchette, Salt, discussion, all in favor? Carried. There is no in-camera meeting. Motion to adjourn, please. Blanchette. And it's 19:48. Thank you all for coming.